Good morning. This is Erwin St. Rose reporting for WKEJ News in Chicago. In local politics, Senator Mark Kirk's reference to an unmarried Senate colleague and presidential candidate as a bro with no HO is the latest in a string of controversial remarks that figure to make an already challenging 2016 re-election bid even more difficult. While most of Kirk's rebel gaffes have been made in speeches or interviews, his remark about South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham was off the cuff and presumably meant to be private. Kirk was chatting during a Senate committee vote when his words were picked up by a live microphone. He's a bro with no HO, Kirk said, apparently talking to a colleague. That's what we'd say on the South Side. The audio was quickly circulated by the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and Kirk found himself facing a barrage of criticism over a quip that insulted both women and African Americans. His press secretary, Danielle Varallo, said in the email that Senator Kirk was joking with his colleague and immediately apologized to anyone offended by his remark. Two announced Democratic candidates for Kirk's Senate seat were less forgiving. U.S. Representative Tammy Duckworth seized on Kirk's comment as a fundraising opportunity in an email sent to supporters by Representative Jan Schakowsky, who said under Duckworth's letterhead, "It's beyond inappropriate for a U.S. senator to make a joke referring to women as HOs, and it's also reflective of Mark Kirk's broader anti-woman legislative record." Andrew Zoff, a former prosecutor with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, said in a statement that no women, let alone a woman like me, an African American and a mother of two daughters, who has spent much of her career overcoming sexist and racist stereotypes, would think his remark either appropriate or funny. Tim Schneider, Illinois Republican Party chairman, described Kirk's comments as unfortunate, but said you have to consider the context. It was meant as an off-the-cuff remark between two colleagues, but it was a hot mic, Schneider said. We know the senator is a great, hard-working advocate for the state of Illinois, and I think we all say something we regret. He regrets it and has apologized. In an interview this year with the Peoria Journal-Star, Kirk said people drive faster through black neighborhoods. With this state and all of its resources, we could sponsor a whole new class of potential innovators like George Washington Carver and eventually have a class of African American millionaires, he told the newspaper. That would really adjust income differentials and make the diversity and outcome of the state much better so that the black community is not the one we drive faster through. His office later defended his commitment to African Americans and said he was combating gang violence, trying to keep assault weapons off the street, and working within the black community to find aspiring entrepreneurs. In national news, a female employee of New York prison arrested in combat escape. A female employee of upstate New York prison was arrested on Friday on charges that she helped two inmates stage a daring escape from the maximum security facility, authorities said. Joyce Mitchell, an industrial training supervisor at the Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, is suspected of having smuggled contraband into the prison, where convicts Richard Matt and David Sweat escaped last weekend, authorities said. Mitchell, 51, is charged with promoting prison contraband and criminal facilitation, according to New York State Police. If convicted, she could face 7 years in prison. She was slated to be arraigned later on Friday, authorities said. This is one large piece of the puzzle in our quest to find these two escaped murderers, New York State Police Mayor Charles Guest said at a news conference. In making their escape last Saturday, the convicted murderers slipped through holes cut into steel walls in a steam pipe and popped out of a manhole in the street. Authorities have not disclosed what kind of contraband Mitchell allegedly smuggled into the prison, located about 20 miles south of the Canadian border. The manhunt involved more than 800 law enforcement officers, along with sniffer dogs and aviation units. It was focused just a few miles from the prison, and searchers were scouring wooded areas, going door to door, and checking on seasonal residences, Guest said. Authorities do not have any evidence that the escapees have left the area, Guest said. He also said there was no evidence indicating whether they were together or had separated. Chilly, rainy weather has made a search difficult, but would have affected the escapees as well, Guest said. Further charges could be filed against Mitchell. Clinton County District Attorney Andrew Wiley said at the same news conference. Wiley said earlier that Mitchell had been the subject of a previous investigation into allegations that she had a close relationship with Sweat, who worked at a prison shop that Mitchell helped supervise. He said the investigations turned up insufficient evidence to bring charges, although action had been taken to separate the two for a period of time. In government news, U.S. spending on Islamic State fight totals $2.7 billion. International coalition has been conducting airstrikes in Iraq and Syria since last August. The first breakdown of U.S. costs released by the Pentagon show that two-thirds of the total bill has gone to the Air Force. It came as Congress rejected legislation banning further spending. The U.S. House of Representatives approved a $579 billion defense spending bill. It rejected an amendment calling for a stop to cash going on the fight against the Islamic State unless Congress passed a new authorization for the use of force. The cost of the U.S. military operation has risen sharply since it began last August in Iraq. This week, the White House announced nearly 450 advisors for Iraq, bringing the total military personnel to 3,500. But officials emphasize there are no combat troops, and the U.S. mission is to train local forces to do the fighting. The U.S.-led coalition has carried out more than 4,100 airstrikes in Iraq and Syria. On Thursday, the top general in the U.S. said the country's intervention in Iraq could extend further. General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said the role of calling in airstrikes, which would put troops near the front lines, remained a future option, and he raised the possibility of establishing a network of U.S. training hubs in northern Iraq. In business news, Rupert Murdoch, the 84-year-old media baron, will hand over the chief executive reins at entertainment conglomerate 21st Century Fox, Inc., to his 42-year-old son James, a source familiar with the situation said. Fox Chief Operating Officer Chase Carey will step into an advisory role as part of a generational shift at the parent company of Fox News and a movie studio behind X-Men and other series, the source said, adding that James Murdoch and his 43-year-old brother, Lachlan, would work as partners. The elder Murdoch, whose media career spans the better part of a century, will take on the role of executive chairman, according to published reports, while New York-based James will have day-to-day control of the company. Lachlan, who, moving from Sydney to Los Angeles, will play an integral role as the company's co-executive chair. The wheels of this partnership were set in motion when Fox announced to both promotions. Lakeland to non-executive co-chairman of both Fox and publishing operation News Corp, and James to co-chief operating officer of Fox together with Carey. This will be the first time that only Murdoch family members will occupy the top few positions at the company. Fox said it would take up their succession issue at its next board meeting, which the source said would take place next week. CNBC reported earlier that the elder Murdoch would still have the final say in whatever transpires at Fox. It was unclear whether the reorganization would take place this year or the start of 2016, CNBC said. The most important thing in the immediate term is that Chase Carey not leave, said Needham & Company Incorporated analyst Laura Martin. Wall Street really cares about Chase Carey running this business, so if the implication of Rupert handing the title to his son is that Chase Carey leaves in the near term, we would expect that to negatively affect the stock prices. A Harvard University dropout, James spent his early career as a cartoonist and co-founder of hip-hop label Raucous Records, which was bought by News Corp. He joined News Corp in 1996 at 23 and soon ran the company's Asian assets. He was later named CEO of B-Sky, now known as Sky, that is 39% owned by Fox. Some key investors have been warning to the idea that James has the ability to run Fox, describing him as curious and a risk taker like his father. They also cite two big differences that they like. James is less sentimental about certain assets than his father is, and more enthusiastic about courting shareholders. The reported executive moves were not surprising, but their timing is. Cohen & Co. analysts said in their note to clients noting that Fox could soon cut earning estimates that could set a new lower bar for a new chief executive target. We have always viewed Rupert as an empire builder who was more concerned with accumulating assets than with delivering shareholder returns, highlighted most recently by the aborted attempt to take over Time Warner, the Cohen analyst said. Time Warner thwarted an $80 billion advance by Fox last year, in part by denigrating the non-voting stock that Rupert Murdoch was offering. Big acquisitions have long been standard operating procedure for Murdoch, who took an Australian newspaper chain and turned it into a global media superpower, buying storied properties such as the Times of London, the Wall Street Journal, and Fox. This has been Erwin St. Rose reporting for WKEJ News in Chicago. Have a great day. Until next time, Chicago.